this. So let's talk about the stolen oil. For this, we need to go all the way back to 1976 and understand a little bit of the history of Venezuela. The leader back then was Carlos Andrés Pérez, and he basically nationalized oil. So at the time, there were a number of oil companies that were, working in the Orinoco oil belt, which is there where Venezuela is, and Perez said, right, we're nationalizing everything. There was some negotiation. There was a nationalized oil company. And of course, that meant that all of these companies that were working there and investing in Venezuela lost either infrastructure or, as in equipment, or they lost the ability to make a profit off of that oil. And then fast forward to 2007 when Hugo Chavez was in power, and he again forced expropriation so Exxon and Conoco exited, and again, there's a whole bunch of equipment that they just had to abandon. And this is what Trump's referring to when he's talking about stolen oil. And he's like, we're going to get that back. Okay, which is a very Trump thing to say and do, is go, that was ours, we're getting it back, and the idea that he's going to install American oil companies in Venezuela now that he has control of it, unsurprising. But here's the real implications of that. This means that we have an elected political official who has marshaled the military for the gain of private business. So he's turned them into mercenaries for hire, essentially, because he's conflated politics and commerce directly. Like, I know that when we went into Iraq and did all that weapons of mass destruction and everything like that, it was always on the surface of it about politics. And then, of course, you have your American contractors who would go in and they would take advantage of whatever they could take advantage of. But it was kind of like a parallel thing. It was the military going in and trying to keep peace and trying to prevent war and trying to find weapons of mass destruction. And then the contractors are coming in going, yeah, well, we're just rebuilding the bridges and we're just helping, with the rebuild of the thing. We're just, we're working alongside, but not together with. But this actual saying of we're getting our oil back, we're going to take over Venezuela, is essentially a government going, hey, big business, we've just created a business opportunity for you. So now if those companies come in, do you know how dangerous that is? Imagine if the UK did that. Imagine if Keir Starmer said, right, we're going to create a business opportunity for the UK by using our military to ride roughshod over another country's rights, sovereignty, borders, people. This is dangerous ground. I mean, it's going to lean us to a place where we start questioning, why do we even have government? Does the military answer to elected officials that we the people have picked, or does it really just answer to the lobbyists, answer to the money? That makes me very uncomfortable, especially since a lot of Europe is on the verge of bringing back the draft, is on the verge of bringing in some form of required national service. This is a huge deal. As I've already said, there was no permission for this either. This is Trump doing this without going through Congress. When America went into Iraq, it was after months of knowledge of the issues. Of course, there was 9/11, which there was no American who was unaware of 9/11 and who felt that personally as an attack. So there was a lot of justification for retaliation, at least in the minds and the hearts of the people. It had been discussed in the media for months and months. It had been followed. It had gone through Congress, the Senate, and everything before they went over and decided to do what they did in Iraq and Afghanistan. This was Trump and a bit of CIA and a bit of military. And already we know that a lot of what's happened leading up to this, the killing of people in the middle of the ocean by bombing their boats. And then if they were still alive, bombing them again to make sure that they were dead, which means that it wasn't about what they said it was about. They said it was about stopping the drug trade. Well, if there's 4 sailors clinging to a raft, they're not transporting drugs anymore, are they? So when you bomb them, that is no longer about stopping drugs, and that is everything about killing for the sake of killing. The idea that Farage has that this is going to keep Russia and China at bay or make them think twice, it isn't. It's going to give them ideas. It's going to buoy them. China has only been kept back from probably trying to do the same thing, subsume Taiwan back into China, because international law, and what will the retaliation be? But now that Trump has just gone in and helped himself to the I don't want to say president. Everyone keeps going the president. I don't think he should be called the president, because he's not the president. He stole that election, the dictator of Venezuela. Now that that's happened, and there will probably be no retaliation, because even the UK hasn't said, they're like, oh, Keir Starmer, international lawyer Keir Starmer, was there going, oh, well, just to be clear, the UK had nothing to do with it. We had nothing to do with it. As if that's what everyone was wondering. As if everybody swiveled the moment this happened from the US to the UK and just sort of went, oh, well, this feels very colonial. UK, did you have something to do with it? And he's there going, no, it wasn't us. We stopped doing that back in the early 1900s. Yes, no, not us. That's what we cared about. But we cared about him condemning it. We cared about him putting his foot down and going, I support international law, and this was not okay. And of course it didn't happen. Which, again, has ramifications for us. We have spent so much time in the UK going, oh, can't be reliant on Russian oil. Look what happens. If we're reliant on Russian oil, then, a war in Europe, and then we don't have the oil, and then we're stuck, and we're still paying Russia, even though we disagree with what they did. Cannot be reliant on Russian oil. And then we go, we don't want the Chinese, we don't want the Chinese taking over all of our commerce and everything. We better put a tariff on Chinese packages coming in because everyone's buying off Temu and TikTok and everything. Oh, can't be too reliant on that. Oh, we don't want all of our manufacturing in China. Oh, we don't want them being totally in control of all of steel everywhere anyway. And yet, here we are, sitting in the friggin' pockets of the Americans, and they at the moment are the most warmongery of the lot. We need to become more self-sufficient and stop just thinking, well, they're our pals, though. But they're our pals. See, we're not pals with Russia and China. We're actually pals with America, and they're going to be good to us. They're like our bestie. They're our bestie. They're not your bestie. Okay? If he wants to take the Shetlands, he's going to take the Shetlands. All right? Look, if it wasn't for the fact that he has a shiny new Venezuelan toy to play with, he would be taking Greenland right now in exactly the same way. He is not a bestie. And the biggest issue is because Europe has allowed the US to basically fund and control all of their defense and tech it up, we have no way of defending ourselves against the people that were defending us until now, where we're like, oh, we're not so sure. Yeah, we're not so sure. What's going on? And you can't trust anything. The Venezuelans are glad to see the back of Maduro. No doubt about that. So glad to see the back of Maduro. However, it's kind of like that bit in the movie where you've been kidnapped, you're being held by some asshole in a basement, and then someone comes along and rescues you, and you go, oh, thank goodness. Oh my God, thank God you rescued me, to find out that your rescuer has even worse sexual proclivities than the person who kept you in the basement. And in this case, literally, allegedly, right? So we seriously need to wake up.